Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you very much indeed for coming along to this September's rather late, unfortunately, child and adolescent coaching. Let's start again. Coaching support group session, and today we're going to be chatting about the importance, really, of goal setting. Now, goal setting is a very how should I put it, a business term, but of course it means an awful lot to a lot of people. And sometimes we need to couch this in different ways, perhaps, and encourage children to start setting their goals at an early age. But how do we do that? What sort of options have we got? Because we can't just say to a 5-year-old, what are you going to do for your career? Because they won't understand. And perhaps that's not the right thing to do. But more and more, I'm finding that there are an awful lot of adolescents who haven't got an idea of what they are going to do with their future. And a lot of this is because it's rather sort of kicking the can down the roads. But if they were already in that frame of mind of thinking about the future, and the future could be tomorrow, but thinking about the future, then perhaps they would be more focused, perhaps they would be more ready to look at what they are doing and to understand how that is going to fit in with their future. That's just my view at the moment. I've found that goal setting is actually quite important. You know, my term of last year was resilience, but then I thought of tolerance, and then I thought of something else, and so on and so forth. But what are other people's ideas of goal setting for children, for adolescents? When do we start? What ideas have you got to help us as coaches, as mediators, as family people, to help to develop our children for their futures? And that's really what this session's all about. Does anybody want to start off? Ashley, you're grinning as if you're ready to jump in.
Yes.
Oh, Anne.
Yes,
Hello.
good evening. In Kenya, it is 8 p.m. I wish to contribute on what you can do as a family.
Okay.
You need to help the child to have focus. Once the child has focus, help the child to work towards achieving the goal he so desires. For example, you wish to be a teacher, you are growing knowing that career-wise, I'd like to be a nurse, a teacher, a doctor, pilot. Help the child to understand on how to focus in terms of home discipline, school discipline, and then reading towards being what he wants to be. Because you cannot set a goal, and the goal is such that your performance at school will not help you realize the goal you've set. So it has to start at basic level, move on to high school and to the institutions of higher learning, because one is already moving towards realizing the goal, the objective and the goal set towards being what he wants to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne, for starting that. Does anybody else want to come in on that one?
Okay.
Ashley.
I think absolutely, Anne. I think we need to kind of help. I think I see a lot of children who don't have goals because when I see them, they are struggling with parent separation, so they're a little bit occupied. But I do think it's the parents. I think it's really helpful as an adult who didn't get sort of steered in a way. I think it's really helpful for the parents and anyone around them that can spot any attributes and strengths to kind of bring that up to the forefront, because there's lots and lots of children nowadays that have a focus on what they don't do well. and what they don't want. And so trying to encourage what's available to their strength is I think is something that some children need some help with. Equally, we do have to teach resilience when it comes to goals, because you can't always get what you want. And you may well, get to a point where you're refused in that area for multiple reasons, whether it's physical, mental, medical, whatever it happens to be. So it's kind of like having an understanding of what you want from life, I think, is really helpful for parents or teachers and us to sort of say, what are they good at? What would they like? What are their thoughts on the world, and what would they like to contribute? It's a difficult one. Goals are hard because sometimes they're not met, and I think resilience is a big part of that.
So from what you're saying there, actually, would basically the goals may not be their career goals. It may be just another goal on the way towards a career, which may or may not be in anybody's mind at the time. Perhaps there's a goal of saying, how am I going to cope with tomorrow? Could be a goal.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a hard one for me. The word goal is so very difficult, isn't it? It's an end. Journey, I suppose, comes to mind. If they've got somewhere where they would like to be, what would the journey look like? To break things down to what even a goal tomorrow might look like on the journey to get there. Yeah, goals are a funny one. Yeah, it's a funny word sometimes, I feel, because it's an end. Yeah, I think the language around that might be really good to investigate.
So you could have a sort of a major goal and a minor goal. Is it, or is what's
or vision, or
a vision or a challenge or something like that?
Lifestyle, or whatever happens to be, whatever age. Yeah, I suppose I've used the word goal for such a long time, and now I feel quite it's quite limiting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, because we all have our own perception of what a goal should be. And a 5-year-old may not have that perception.
Yeah.
They may understand a goal to be only something to do with football, or let me guess, you have goals in netball?
Yeah.
Yeah, as an example. But then, and that can confuse the issue when the goal may be to win the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Happiness.
What's happiness? What's the target?
So happiness is a lovely goal, I suppose, but then everything's so, yeah, it's an interesting conversation because I have lots of goal talks with mature women, and yeah, it's all based on your history of what someone tells you a goal is, how someone frames that.
Yeah. Sonia, have you got anything to add to this? You've just muted yourself. You've muted yourself rather than unmuting
Hang on.
yourself.
That's it. Yeah, goals. I love teaching about goals. So I think in terms of obviously age appropriate, but depending on what age we're talking of the child. But I always think if you've framed it positively, you can break it down into steps. Obviously, you've mentioned there about footballer, so giving you an example of a goal yourself, modeling ourselves, giving them an example. So in terms of children, you said 5-year-olds or 6, 7. Say if we broke it down to, say it was, say, homework. So you could help them say, because I wrote some notes thinking about, because I just got your email today. So I've written down, instead of saying stop forgetting homework, we could use a goal saying remember to pack my homework folder every morning. So with a young child, I mean, that would work, but you could do it in sort of a fun way or tie it into something that they're really interested in. So connect it to personal interest. So you mentioned footballing, so remember to pack my football boots. It's the same, it's like remembering about the homework. So I do it like that in a fun way, or use characters, or because if you sing a smart goal to a child as an adult, we would break down the smart, specific, measurable. But then a child, how I used to do it with students who all had a silent illness or a learning disability, I put it on the screen. I'd use characters, but I would give them examples, say by the character, make it really fun and that's how they would remember. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thumbs up from Ashley there. Emma, have you got anything to add? Because I know you've
I knew you'd ask me. I'm
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
oh no, don't
Well,
ask me.
yeah, I'm going to ask you because I know you've got two youngsters, and I know you work very hard with them to try and focus them on their futures.
Yeah,
Almost, isn't it?
again, like, you know, what everyone was saying, they're quite young, they don't always understand what a goal is. So yeah, just the wording around that. I don't know what a better word would be. It depends, doesn't it, on what the goal is, whether it's because when you say the word goal, you know, a lot of it's up there, isn't it? Like a big major goal. But like you say, it might just be a goal of achieving, I don't know, coming into school the next day or something, you know, just something small. But yeah, I mean, definitely yeah, so there's one thing about the wording of goals and how we use that with children, but yeah, the second thing is sort of doing trying to get them to achieve a goal in a fun way, like Sonia was saying, I think, was it Sonia? But also, you know, they don't, I mean, like going back to what Anne was saying about focus, you know, if I try and get Liam to focus on a goal, his focus is everywhere. And it's kind of, you know, teaching them, Anne was right, teaching them those strategies first before we goal set with them. So, yeah, so a combination of what you guys are saying, really. I mean, you know, I don't suppose I've really done any specific goal setting work. Maybe I have with my kids, but like not in a formal way. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of an example now. I don't know. But
It's almost a case of, you know, to a certain extent, a lot of us will almost sort of try and do this naturally, and the word goal would not even appear
yeah, that's
in our
right.
thoughts, because we're encouraging our children perhaps to think further than just, you know, what's in front of them
Yeah.
at an early stage, to try and to think ahead, perhaps,
Yeah, it's about thinking ahead, isn't it, really? Yeah, to
and
achieve
then
something,
extending the think ahead bit
yeah.
to well, what are you going to do when you grow up?
Mhm.
Yeah, the question that most children hate
Yeah.
normally comes from an aged aunt or something like that. You know, what are you going to do when you grow up?
Yeah, and most of them say, I want to be a teacher because that's the only thing they know. You're the little ones anyway, you know.
But is there a problem with that thought? It doesn't mean to say that they're going to be a teacher. The fact is that they've actually thought about something and they've therefore started the process. They might change from that. I mean, I always wanted to be a doctor until about age 13, when I decided I really couldn't stand the sight of blood and decided to try and do something else. Give me a minute. Let's lose that one. And so therefore it's a case of just getting out there, and even if it's a case of, you know, it's so far in the distance, it really doesn't matter. But the fact is that you're thinking about something to do out there, and I think that's also important to a certain extent. You know, when do we encourage people? I know in, you know, from where Anne is coming from in Kenya, there is a tremendous sort of encouragement to get the children to think about what they're going to be in their lives. And I think to a certain extent in the United Kingdom, we've lost that. And there are as I say, I won't say rudderless, but there are a lot of teenagers who really haven't given it much thought. And so therefore, it all catches up on them all of a sudden. Not only are they not focusing on why they are doing their exams, but they have, life is marching on. They suddenly realize life is going on. And what are they going to do about it? So to me, the important thing is to sort of bring that stage back much earlier and encourage them to start thinking about their future. As I say, that future may be the next day, it may be the next week, it may be the next month, it may be the next term. But at least it's giving them that thought rather than waiting for the first decision they have to make really at school will be 2 years before they do their 16-year-old exams, their GCSEs, when they've got to think about what subjects they're going to do.
Yeah, because I mean, you think, we never learnt about goal setting in school. But actually, I think it's a really valuable skill to learn, because like you say, you suddenly, you're doing all these things, you don't really know why. And then you get to a certain age, you think, well, I don't really know what I want to do because you set no goals. So yeah, I think it's an important skill to learn. Yeah.
Yeah. I first ask them first, what do you think a goal is? And what I did, because I'm going back to this football thing, but I put a little video, it's like a GIF of a net and the ball going into the net. Yeah, because a lot of people, when you say goal, they think football. Yeah, a sport, like you've mentioned netball earlier. And then I say to them, okay, so how are you able to score goals? I tried it from that angle as well, because a footballer, a young boy wanting to learn football, or a young girl, is they have to have goals to be able to get to grow their talent. They have to do the same thing over and over, say it's scoring a goal, kicking a ball. So I tried to do it that way as well, to let them understand what a goal. But remember, a lot of kids won't answer football as well. They might say, oh, a goal. Some can get it, some can't. So they might say a post, like a goal post. It's quite fun when you hear all the different answers and then tie it all together. Because for a goal, any goal we set in life, we want to score at it, don't we? So I just use that as a little bit of fun.
Yeah,
to put it in their mind.
that is a good one, because that would totally work with my son who's obsessed with football. So if I put it like that, then I would say, well, how are you able to score those goals? Well, he'd probably say by doing this and that and the other. And I would say, but what do you call that? Is developing your skills. So it is about developing those skills to be able to work towards a goal, isn't it? So
Yes.
but yeah, so that's a good kind of example, I think. Yeah.
I think that's perhaps one of the keys, is not only once one has a goal, any goal in place, is okay, how are you going to get there? What have you got to do to get there, to achieve that? Where does that start? It's not a case of and working backwards, perhaps. I find when I'm having some mock interviews with 13, 14, 15-year-olds, it's great fun, because they think it's all about work, and I say no, it isn't. It's about what are you going to do to sort of start the process almost. How are you going to get to whatever you want to do?
This is interesting, because what you're saying here is so different, isn't it? The perspectives on it are fantastically different. There's the prospect that you're talking about, Sonia, which is really relatable to children. And then we were speaking 5 minutes ago, and I was just recalling all the pressure from my housemaster saying, what are you going to do with your life? And prior to that, all I was under was pressure to know. But of course, I didn't have anybody that said, you're good at this. Would this be interesting to you? And so it is good to set it off early with them, to start thinking about how do you concentrate long enough to even think about what a goal might be. So giving that the analogies and starting to pull the threads for them with analogies of a goal setting and repeating and so is fantastic, because how would they know how to concentrate enough to know what a goal is if they're too busy thinking about everything anyway? So it's fantastic. Those examples are great, and it would be great to have them for various ages and sexes to see actually how you could apply that. Really, really very different, you know, being asked at 14 to being asked at 5, you know. But at 5, you get the idea of what it even means, as opposed to the pressure at 14, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that, because when I used to do it, so my field is fitness, health and well-being, so I would do it around food, because food is huge in this day and age. So a lot of children are above their ideal weight. So when I would do it on food goals or how to make changes, again, I used a character, but the breakdown was it was 4 to 10-year-olds and then 11 to 17. So I had 2 different groups. So the 4 to 10, the older ones would always help. So around the games or even writing stuff. And I looked back the other day, I found some paperwork, because I'm terrible at keeping all this stuff and not getting rid. But when the young children used to write things down, it was interesting to look at the answers. And what I would do a lifestyle session with the children, a separate lifestyle session with the parents, yeah, and then a separate activity, physical activity with the kids, one for the parents, and sometimes they would join. Because if you join the parent with the child, sometimes the child won't answer because the parent's there, yeah, and they liked the third party, in this, for instance, being me, and at home, for them to learn with the goals and to get the skills and the changes, they would say, "Oh, but Sonia said," and that worked. No, it's quite funny when I look back and I laugh about it. And this was another interesting thing, because I remember Ian doing it with. Do you remember the Irish lady who was the first one qualified in doing the young coaching? And there was a session and she was talking to us all, and I really related to her because she said something that I already did, was how you look when you're speaking with the children. It was very important, and I thought, when I look back at some of the things that the children wrote, they would say, "I like Sonia's curly hair." Yeah. So when the children feel comfortable, or they're looking at you, and one of them wrote, three of them wrote, "Sonia's bossy, but I'm learning." Because sometimes you have to be direct for them to learn. And that's how I would tie it in. I know it sounds like I'm digressing, but that's how I would tie it in. And then they were able to make the changes, and the results were shown throughout the program.
Oh, thank you, Sonia.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to come in?
Yeah, hi, it's me. Hi, everybody. It's Sonia.
Other Sonia. Sorry, I suddenly realised right at the start that we had 2 Sonias, and I just said Sonia.
Sonia got away because she was faster on the unmute than I was. I've got 4 points that I wanted to make about this, because obviously I've got a network. I run a network for BME women in. We are obviously international, and so we have people, leadership and business, obviously a great number of coaches, etc. So obviously I've done some of the courses and different courses. My thing is in branding, marketing, also looking at the DEI perspective. So when I thought about this area and went into this area, the 4 things that struck out for me, and I did a post, I did a blog about this, about how do we set goals for children up to the age of 7, because that's meant to be the most important time of their life. Neuroscience says that's a time when their brain is developing and it's most innocent, but still it's like a sponge. So I think I thought when you were all talking, I thought, well, it's understanding the characteristics and often the strengths and the attributes, as somebody said, of the child. But also you have to think about culture and the community. So if it's intergenerational, baby boomers and traditionalists, they grew up with family around them. So even if they were working, they still had the grandparents and they had good role models around them, even if they didn't know. So they were always there to push them to go forward in their own style and way. And I think that parents, and when I thought about that, I was thinking when you're all talking, there is a trend for children to allow children to be free and expressive, but children like discipline. They like structure, even if they protest. Good old super nanny days. But what I think people, parents and those who work with children like that, they need to be responsible. They have to be responsible and they have to be strategic. So just as you would plan for a house, or you'd plan for a wedding, or you'd plan buying a car, why are you not planning for how my child develops? And so when you're all talking about goals, I agree with the lady who suggested, or not suggested, recommended that the children need to be more resilient. So we look at the millennial children, and when I talk to their parents, I say, have they got that work ethic? Have they got that toughness? They go, no, son. They never do what we will do because they're not that resilient. So that was a really good point for me. I think number 3, I thought, yeah, understanding that goals must be flexible. They must be agile and not putting your lens or filters on that strategy, and letting the child understand that there is life cycles. So when the small child comes and he says, oh, Robin won't play with me anymore, and you know, they get really upset, and then you have to manage that, and then a week later they're best friends again, you know. So we've got to manage how we say to them and word it. And I thought about communication. How do we communicate? So again, as Sonia was, I think it was Sonia saying about body language and eye contact, and making the child feel confident that life is not a game. So we have to start instilling goals, even if we don't want to use that language, and turning them into habits. And one of the things I think is really important, if you turn them into habits, they become more disciplined and the attachments to what they like. So if you give them that chance to express themselves, and, you know, if you look at some of our great inventors and our great innovators and creatives and these entrepreneurs, they've never done one thing. They failed at many things before they had their overnight success, in inverted commas. And it goes back to, is it Gladwell Maxwell's 10,000 hours, where you do things and you go back into habits, you go back into habits. And I was thinking, when you ladies were talking, I was thinking, well, is there a problem in our curriculum where we say we've taken out the competitiveness? Because at school, when I went to school, we used to have reading charts. So it was Peter and Jane books. Ian, I think you will remember them. And we used to
Janet and Jane in my day.
was it Janet and no, it was no.
It's Janet and John. Janet and John.
I just got what you said. So you get gold
That's what I said
stars.
as well.
Yeah, I got gold. I used to get the stars, but I was so competitive, I didn't realize, and I always wanted to win. So I always used to read ahead of everybody else, and I set the goals, but I didn't realize that was goal setting. And another thing I was thinking about, parents, if you're taking responsibility or you're introducing tactics or tools, we've got to think differently. How do people respond? Because it's not a one hat fits all for every child. And if they're going through different stages of their life, and we also have to remember that this is the first time that we're really talking about trauma, the effects of trauma, and understanding that it does play a massive impact in the child's behaviour. So if you don't understand the lifestyle and also how the parents communicate, how it impacts on the child, and this is before they're 7. So if you think about children who arrive to you from abusive families, they still keep the secret. They know how to keep the secret. And it's allowing them to feel confident and safe and secure, even when they don't get it right. And I'm going to finish on, we talked about sports. So I used to play tennis, and I've had a health issue. And one of the things, so I used to play netball. And what I didn't realize about sports like that is that it's that team spirit. So it's not about me, it's about the team. Everything I do is about the team. But what's about me is to ensure that I don't let the team down. So one of the things when I really wanted to win in tennis, and I was thinking, who do you like? So it's Federer or Nadal. So I bought all the books, all the diet stuff they did. I watched all the videos. I watched them train all around the world, who they trained with. So I no longer enjoyed the sport because I started to watch where their feet were and everything. So as a parent, if our child shows curiosity and wants to try different and wants to explore different things, as Ian says, we shouldn't be rigid and say, well, what do you want to be now? They don't know. They just want to explore. They want to be an adventurer. And also girls, their style is going to be very different because the roles are still there. They're going to be more empowering, and the boys are going to be more hunters, and the girls will be, more empowering. So you look at the toys, what the parents are giving to the children. So are they buying the daughters just dolls and stoves and teacups, and the boys get the rifles and the water pistols, etc. So again, we have to look at toys. And I didn't realize, and when I was doing the research, I was saying, all I kept thinking about was Lego, Lego, Lego. And I remember working for this global company, so we had all the VPs. And I remember we were talking, and I used to say to them when they came in, all right, what book did you read this month? And we talked about toys. And I remember he was the most senior VP in the company. And he said, he'd come and say, what's the question for the month, Sonny? What's the question? So we said, the toys. And he went, Lego. And I said, why? He said, because it never worked. It just a shambles. It all fell apart, just like my department. When I was doing the research, he was saying, it's like teaching them to build, how to put structure in place, etc. So the importance of toys, lots of charts, but making the charts fun and basing them around their personality, and just making sure that the language of goals is from play to purpose. So if you're going to build a Lego tower, some children are going to be able to build dinosaurs and cars, and some will just be lucky if they can get it in a straight tower block. So let's look about the narrative has to be very important, not our narrative, our filters, our viewpoints, even the way we learn how to cope. It has to be, we have to be careful because we have to let the child be free, especially up to the age of 7. And then a lot of the times the children, they're crushed because they're forced into this curriculum that doesn't allow them to have that freedom, because Ofsted wants children to be this and we've got to pass this and that. And sometimes that's not the personality of the child. And we know that through apprenticeships, and different styles of work, how they learn, etc. But we have to be more flexible and agile. So thank you for listening.
Thanks, Sonia. Sonia B. I don't know if you've been watching the chat, anybody, but Jackie has said, she's got an unstable network, so she's shared on chat. I think it's useful to help children see that there is a link between what they do today and results later, be it tomorrow or years later. So when my kids were young, I tried just to get them to do something in preparation for tomorrow, like packing their bags for a trip or picking up their clothes the night before. I wish I could do the same for my son, yeah. And they made the link between that and how late they could wake up and still be on time to leave with everyone. As they grew older, we started looking into goals in a more traditional way and working backwards. I also shared stories of my own goals and how I achieved or didn't achieve them, because I think role modeling is also useful. Jackie, thank you very much indeed for that. I think that's some very good points. And Sonia, thank you, Sonia B, thank you very much indeed for all of your points that were coming up there. You know, the idea of the you know, perhaps the impulsion to get ahead of the game, whatever the game is to get ahead of. But also, we were talking about what if the goal you've set, it doesn't, what if it doesn't achieve it? What's your plan B? Where's your safety net? Is it important to have a safety net, or at what stage? And one of the things that that Sonia said, and I thought for Ashley here, was the aspect of trauma, because I expect, as he judging the situation, I expect that you come across a lot of trauma within family mediation, do you not? And you know, how does that help or hinder children to focus on what really they could be doing to achieve something towards repairing the situation?
Yeah, they are going through trauma, and I'm luckily doing a course that I think is really resetting my brain to focus on the capacity of the parents to put their children first, in the sense of what are the parents capable of hearing that the child's needs are in order to be the age they are. Otherwise, the child is wrapped up in so many things about the parents, they can't think about themselves. And there's a huge need for a child to be a child. A couple of things here, because you said about a safety net there, and about, you know, what happens if your goal fails, and having a safety net. I don't know, if your goal doesn't work for whatever reason that's out of your control, what can they learn from that? So that's that thing about resilience, is that if you're disappointed in something, what have you learned from it? Because nothing is ever lost. If we learn, of course, that's when you're older, but of course, when we're talking about 7-year-olds, it is very hard when they're in trauma, and that's why I'm working hard with the parents to lower that, so that a child can carry on learning at the age they need to learn at. Because there's so many children younger than 7 that are stuck in high conflict families, whether they're separated or whether they're in a relationship. But it does have a very big impact on their learning ability.
Ashley, can I just interject? Sorry, you raised a really good point. So I love these, even though I don't like basketball or NFL, but they always do these shows from where these children are young, and they always know they want to be on the team, and they come from very, very dysfunctional backgrounds. And obviously many of them are ethnic minorities. And when you see the programs where they follow them and that determination, you never fail. Is it LeBron who said, I missed, let's say, 1,500 times, but it doesn't mean I didn't become the number one. You know, Federer, you know, Nadal. So you look at these people, even Einstein, even though, you know, in inverted commas, Elon Musk, if you look at the Silicon Valley and what they're doing, and they don't say I fail, they just go, get on with it, blue sky thinking. And I think if we teach that to our children, not when it's in trauma, but if it is teaching them that that's not the end.
I think you can only teach it.
Yeah.
I wonder, sorry to interrupt this, I think you can almost only teach it if you live it as a parent. So that's the hard part, is actually
but that's the problem.
Yeah.
But that's the problem, because I always say this, I live in a cul-de-sac, and at the end we've got some flats, and every now and again we have these families move in with their children. So at some point in the summer it's hell, because it's safe. The parents send all the children out, they're on the scooters, they're on the bikes, it's noise, and you watch them. And I remember one particular day, somebody must have worked in a sports shop, and I just did this course Transforming Leadership for Women at Oxford, and they were talking about how boys and girls interact. And they were saying, the boys will say, they had them in a tent, and the boy said, yeah, I threw my ball and it went to the stars. And the other boy went, yeah, I threw my ball and it went to the moon. And the other one said, I threw mine and it went to Mars. And the other boy went, mine went all the way and it didn't come back. And then they went, oh, okay. And they said, that's how they behave in the boardroom. Then they filmed the girls, and the girls were patient, they were nurturing and everything. And I always stuck in my mind. So on this particular occasion, they came in this like big SUV. So they had these toys. So there's about 20 children, all youngsters under 11. They're all primary school children. So you know my age when I say things like that. And so they took out the scooters, the bikes, all the really nice toys. And the girls waited for the boys. And I always say this, and I said it to the lecturer, and I wanted to open the window and say to the girls, go and get them toys, go and get them. And they wait, and they did exactly what they said. And even now you watch the parents, and it's like modern parenting. They don't bring that, like you can see some parents, they're strict. And other parents, you're like, what is going on in that house? That's, when you open the door, you think, what is going on in that house? Is there a bookshelf? Do they eat a cooked meal? Are they doing the basics that will give them, do they have breakfast before they go to school? Simple things like that. And as someone said, pack the bag the day before, or do all those chores. Well, when we were growing up, we had chore duties. We knew we had to take our uniform. We knew what clothes we had to wear. We knew, and someone said, he went, oh, my mum used to drop me to school. And I went, really? He said, yeah. And I was so shocked. And I said to my mum, Mum, did you used to drop us to school? Because I know my mum and dad drove. She went, yeah. I said, Mum, you're a liar. You probably took me once and said, learn that route. And you never took me again. And I said, because there was a dodgy man in a red car. So I knew I had to cross the road before I passed his car and go under the bridge. But she goes, no, I drove you to school. I goes, Mum, stop it. I'm too old for Esther Ranson. So that was a point I wanted to make, that if we teach that resilience, even through trauma, we can give them the tools so that when they feel that this is, when they say this plan ain't working, what do I need? Not to see it as failure, but to say, right, what do I need? What did I learn from it? What can I do to make it better? And if we implement that thinking and attitude and characteristic into the child from a young age, that will build the confidence to not be scared to do things. So it's like riding a bike, doing roller skating, ice skating, all those things we have to do as a child, horse riding. We didn't have, oh, I'm scared. You just had to get on the horse. You had to get on the bike, You had to do sports day, 3-legged race, and you wanted to win. So I think there is something about the parents' responsibility, which is what I say, but we cannot take it for granted that every parent has the tools or the attitude to be able to deliver that kind of parenting that we need. So you just have to look at the protesters, and when I watch them, I go, how they're behaving, and I sit there and I go, wow. And to think they have children, so they're not doing homework, and they're off to the Wetherspoon pub. But the best moment, I think, on the protesters, they're covered in the English flag, and they caught them all at the Indian food trucks. So it's the hypocrisy. That's what they say. So even in the church, the parents say, I'm a Christian, I'm God-fearing, I'm a Catholic, and they go home, domestic abuse, drug taking, alcoholism, all that nonsense, bingo, shopping addiction. So, that's all my 2 pennies. So I hope that was useful.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I keep hearing a lot from Sonia's first talk to this one, which is interesting. You are still mentioning about sports. So when I mentioned to you earlier, when I had the 2 groups, the 4 to 10 and the 11 to 17, parents separate, the kids, you also mentioned, Sonia, about the trust. So trauma can come on a scale, can't it? So what would traumatize me may not traumatize any of you. And how I look at it, when you're making it fun, you have the activity because that's the team part, and you've mentioned a lot about teams because that can teach you a lot as well. Because if you don't win, you're still supporting and pleased for the other person that wins the game. But what I found interesting, when you worked with the children, and it was structure and consistent, twice a week they were coming, the child would then trust you. I'll use that third party that I mentioned earlier, and the child, I'll tell you this now, would always tell me what was the reason. Well, for one, why were they on the course? Because they're above their ideal weight. Yeah. And it could have been simple, something as the other sibling was getting more attention. But all the children told me the reason, and I found that interesting. And that was over a 12-week program, twice a week. So when you're engaging and making it fun, they're feeling relaxed. Yeah, they do open up. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Say there was 10 in the group, 10 children, 10 sets of parents, whether it's a mother, father, or a carer, or a grandparent. And I have mentioned this before on the program. The child would say something simple as, I would like to have breakfast. This was a goal. So I'd like to have breakfast with my parents. Yeah, it was quite humbling or upsetting at times, because you might think that's something simple. We could sit and have breakfast. Or it was, I would like my mum or dad to take me to the park. So then when I would hear this, then I would turn it and then speak to the parent. But the child, I feel they do understand if you're explaining it on their level. They do understand about goals or making changes. But Sonia's right. I think the play, you mentioned play to purpose. The playtime is good, and then focus on the purpose, whether that's the goal, what needs to change.
Sonia, thanks very much, Sonia C.
So,
Can I just come in just quickly, realistically for the recording, so that everybody's points are heard here. Jackie's come back saying kids need to experience failure as it is part of life. I think that as adults, our role is to help them see that it is not the end, and that there is always tomorrow, another chance to try again or try something else. What we say and do when the fail is critical. And then Joan has said, as adults, it is essential to recognize and respect the generational differences between ourselves and the children we support and serve. Yeah, that's a very good point, Joan. Children today grow up in a world shaped by technologies, media, and social influences that are often very different from the experiences of previous generations. I'd say often, I would say every time they're different. By being aware of these differences, adults can better understand children's perspectives, communicate effectively, and provide guidance that is relevant, empathetic, and empowering. Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on as far as I'm concerned on that one. What about other people? It's all gone quiet.
I had it in my notes earlier how the media and social media and influences are coming from every angle now for every child, whether it's TV, whether it's their local social setting, whether it is family or restrictive family, or but social media is playing a huge role in potentially unattainable goals, which is really difficult. So I think having people on the ground that can set ones that are real for them in their moments, I think is really important. So Sonia doing the one with the food, I think, is incredibly important, because there's a lot of miscommunication about what food's about for children, and obesity, and there's so much out there at the moment that it's so conflicting for a child to know whether it's healthy, unhealthy, socially norm, against it, and it is unhealthy. There's no way, two ways about it. whether it's teeth, body, heart, all of it. But of course, social media have made that very challenging. And social media is making it challenging on every front. You know, how you could be a footballer if you try hard enough. Well, the numbers of footballers that reach the top are, you know, very tiny. So we do have to kind of fight for this. I don't know whether I've taken that
I was
differently, but
jumping in there.
understanding their perspective is really key.
I think
Yeah, and actually, one of the things we can say is that, and I'll be very quick, it's as if social
You
media,
say that, Sonia.
TikTok, it's as if the social media is raising our children. I mean, even if you go to the doctors, the little children, they're only about 2 and they're all on the phones and everything. So we have to be careful in terms of what parental guidance, and that's another ball game, which we could have another conversation on. So I'm going to jump out here. Thank you for some of the points you all raised.
And actually, thank you very much indeed for your ideas, because one of the first things we talked about was the word goal, the right one. And Ashley's very kindly added goals, wishes, dreams, plans, desires, thoughts, destinations, which involves a journey. I think that's very, very pertinent, that we've got all these ideas, and it may be that we're actually developing goals for, with our children. I nearly said for our children, didn't I? Goals with our children in a way that that they can understand, but we just don't think of them as goals at the time. And it's important, I think, to realize that all of these opportunities are open to us, and to encourage them. Well, I suppose what we're really doing is we're encouraging them to think for themselves, aren't we? We're encouraging them to think ahead. And I think this is perhaps one of the most important things, that if they are not given that opportunity to think about their future, whether it be in the next couple of minutes, whether it be in the next couple of days, it really doesn't matter. But if they're given the opportunity to think about their future, then that must be, if we can get that into the program so that it becomes a habit. And somebody mentioned habits earlier. I think it's very, very important that if we can get children to think ahead as a habit, then perhaps this is an excellent life skill for them. Doesn't matter what their future is going to bring, they're already in that thought process of how they're going to go forward.
Yeah, and I would say that, they're probably achieving goals all the time, but we're probably not picking up on it, and it's the wording that we might want to kind of use with them, like, oh, so that was actually a goal that you achieved, wasn't it? Did you realize that you set your mind on that goal and you've achieved it? So I think bringing that language in a little bit more would help.
Yeah, I think, Camo, you've got a very good point there. I think perhaps if we if we are aware of what's going on, then we can couch it in the appropriate terms to praise them for thinking ahead, perhaps to praise them for getting into a habit of preparedness for whatever purpose, whether it be preparedness for the next dance class, whether it be preparedness for the next football class, whether it be preparedness for the next holiday.
Just with your tool, Sonia, sorry to interrupt, Ian, would a goal meter work for children, do we think, then? So if they had like micro goals that they had on a little meter, and at the bottom when they want to achieve them by, whether it is learning to pack their book or completing 8 out of 10 in their homework or whatever it happens to be, I wonder, a little mood meter on their bedroom door or on the fridge or something where they got a reward for themselves for ticking it off, if it was micro goals.
So we're talking about star charts and
well, kind of, but a little bit
sweetie jars, perhaps.
So yeah, that's interesting. So what I used to do is they'd have a weekly goal until they become the following week. So I broke it down into 3 different lots of goals. So talked about the short, mid-term, long-term. So at the start of the program, you're teaching them what a goal is, and then once they understand about that, we set a long-term goal for the end of the program. So the child is writing that goal themselves. But the weekly goal, so they would put a sticker on, they would come up in front of each other and they'd put the sticker on, and that kept them motivated because they were with others. But then they would then say what they did to reach that goal that week. So the goal was always reinforced each week. So they understood what it was. So the goals were a physical activity and obviously healthy eating, making a change with the food, but it worked.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, sorry, excuse me. Where is my... Oh, I'll stop, I can't find it. Oh. You can never find the tools that you've got to hand until you... But yeah, okay. It's given me food for thought about, because I do mood meters versus, but a goal meter might be quite nice use of tool. I hadn't even thought about.
Any tool, I think like that, yeah, it's fun because you're seeing what's happening. Yes, I think it sounds, wow. More the better, I find, the for activities, something different. And it's not boring then.
Yeah. Keeping them engaged.
Keeping them interested.
In whatever activity works for them in that moment in time, I think is really important. So that's why having that range of stuff, I think, and I love this because it's just thinking actually what works for a 5, what works for a 2, you know, what works for a 10-year.
So I'll give you an example so everyone can understand. So to keep the goals on track for the children and the young adults, I always used Mr. Greedy. So I don't know if any of you know about the Mr. Men. Yeah. So I wear leggings, fun leggings, with the bright pink, but they have Mr. Greedy on there. So I'm always saying about the goal. So, and every week they'd have to say to me, why is Mr. Greedy the way he is? So they'd all have to answer me individually why he had a big tummy, so they could understand what it was, what was Mr. Greedy doing, but that's when they were making the change. And then I'd use Little Miss Sporty. So visual, it works. Being in the character, having a bit of fun with it, then they're still engaged. Yeah. Yeah. It's props, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Props
I think,
for goals.
Yeah. I think Joan's comment as well, one of my favorite tools for goal setting with children has been the development of a pictorial vision board. This is just about what we're talking about. Mostly the pictorials change over time, echoing Ashley's words. When you review the tools, it actually looks like a journey. So you can see where you've been and where you are now. And I think that's one of the important things. Sonia, you're...
Oh, can you hear me?
I can now.
So that was the word I meant to say was used as well. So thanks for that, journey. The goal was a journey. And I always taught, even to this day, I still do it. If you come off track, it doesn't matter, we get back on. Does it matter if you have that extra or you haven't done that physical activity? No, we just get back on track and use a bit of fun with the train off track and then coming back on track. And then we choo-choo.
I think getting back on track is very, very pertinent, especially to me at the moment, because my son's just gone to university and he's struggling in the first week of being away from home, and trying to get him back on track is going to be my challenge. So thanks for that thought. Anyway, well, it's time to end, and thank you very much indeed for everybody who has participated, and thanks for those who have turned up and listened in. Hopefully, everybody goes away with more information about goal setting. We've all agreed how important goal setting is, but how different it can be. It can be presented. And I think that's perhaps one of the most important things, how differently we can present it and get the children to be thinking about, with this key life skill, which personally think is arguably one of the most important, but then all the key life skills are most important, aren't they? So thank you very much indeed, everybody.
Thank you,
And I wish
guys.
you all the best and look forward to seeing you next month.
Thanks, Ian.
Cheers then. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.